Hey everybody, it's Bill. In lieu of a tournament video or practice video this week, um, I thought I would do an in the bag video. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One, I did play a tournament this past weekend. It was an unsanctioned, fun tournament called No Imps, No Whiners. Whiners spelled like someone who drinks alcohol, because the course is at the Long Trout Winery. So good time, had a blast. Got to see a whole bunch of people that I haven't seen in a long time. But that course is extremely unfriendly for a cart. Lots of rocks, lots of roots. It's pretty rough. It's a lot of fun to throw, but not a lot of fun to pull a cart. So my camera, which is attached to the cart, stayed in the car with the cart. I really haven't had the time to get out and do a lot of practice this week. Trying to keep up on chores and family issues, etc. So there's not really a practice video. And also, I have tried to do a couple of in the bag videos this year, in the last couple of weeks, and not because it was terribly windy, but the slight breeze that was out there on the course must have just been at the right angle for the camera's microphone to pick it up, and all you could hear was this constant wind rumble that sounded like a freight train going by. So I had to scrap those videos, and yeah, so we'll do it in the bag sitting here in front of the computer camera, in a slightly more controlled environment, and hopefully it'll at least won't sound like we're in a train yard. Anyway, let's get started. Excuse me, got a little nose itch. So I carry exactly one putter in my bag. Just turn it so that it looks right on camera. It's a VIP maiden, or not a VIP, it's a BT medium maiden. Now, the story behind that, I have not been putting with putters. For the last 2 years, I've been putting with mid-ranges. I was struggling with my putting a couple years ago, and I discovered that I got a much cleaner release with the mid-ranges than I did with the putters. So I just switched to putting with mid-ranges, putting with I believe it's a BT Worship, which we'll get to in a minute. I was getting much cleaner releases. I was getting straighter flights. I do spin putt, so the Worship seemed to get to the basket quickly and a little more accurately, but mostly I was just getting a much better release with the mid-ranges. Now, thanks to a gentleman that has started to help me out with my game, shout out to Dan Brooks-Wells. He has gently started to convince me to put a putter back in my bag. Not necessarily to putt with, but to have a disc that when I throw it through the woods, which is where I mainly spend my practice time and a lot of my tournament time, the disc will go straight and settle straight, as opposed to flying straight like the mid-ranges do, but then fading off into the weeds. And I have been working with it for a bit, and I'm starting to get it to just fly straight and land within the line that I throw it. Not terribly proficient with it yet because it's been a couple of years, and the rim is a little deeper than the mid-ranges, but I'm working on it. And I've tried putting with it a little bit, and yeah, probably stay with the mid ranges to putt. But you know, it's a feel thing. It's a preference. I may stay with that, but at least I do have a putter back in the bag for the time being. Thank you, Dan. Mid ranges. I carry 5. Try to pull them up here without looking. I'll do this in order of most understable to most overstable. The first mid range that I have in my bag, the most understable, is a Tersus, and I believe this is a VIP Tersus. Yes, it is. I just put the Tersus back in the bag to replace an extremely understable Warship that I had, taking up that understable slot. That understable. Sorry about that. Our dog, who thinks that every disc is her disc, heard discs landing on the floor and decided to come and, you know, reclaim them. Not hers. Sent her back upstairs. Anyway, back to the Tersus. The understable Warship that I was using as my most understable mid is now the property of Poseidon. It's in the drink somewhere. So I had to replace it. I don't have another extremely beat-in Warship to take that place currently, so I stuck the Tersus in my bag, and that will work until I've worn another Warship down to a point where it is an understable Maniac, and then I'll swap it back in. The next mid-range that I have is actually the mid-range that I putt with. It's another Warship. It's an Origio Warship. Let me get this turned correctly. I can't do this. It's all backwards. This is my putting mid-range. It's also a mid-range that I will throw, you know, as a drive or from the fairway. That it's an understable disc. It will drift to the right if I throw it right hand backhand. But it won't be so aggressive as the Tersus, and it actually will pan out and land flat. But primarily this is my putter. Then I have a straight Warship. This is a Tournament Burst Warship, and this is a nice straight flyer. If I overpower it a little bit, it will turn, as you would expect. But mainly, it is just a nice straight through the woods, fire it and forget it disc. And as you can tell, you know, I have 2 Warships in the bag now. I normally carry 3. I'm in love with this disc. I'm in love with the Warship mold. It's probably the most comfortable disc I have. In my practice bag, I have 10 Warships and 10 Stags, and we'll get to the Stag later. But I have 10 Warships, and I will go out and I will just practice, you know, flat throws, just, and if you know, if your wrist turns a little bit, or if you've got lazy wrist and your highs are releasing, if you're pulling your mechanics around hard to the right, then you're going to start yanking everything, and the Warship will tell you immediately what you're doing wrong. So this is a great disc, and I would recommend it to anybody. For my overstable mid-range, I carry a Sparkle Bard. Watch the reflection here. I love the Bard. I will always carry one just because it feels exactly like a Warship, but it doesn't fly exactly like a Warship. I can keep it straight. for 2/3 of the flight, but it's so reliable. It is such a reliable fade. It's a rescue disc if I need to escape the woods, escape the rough, go up over something, go out around something backhand. I mean, this is such a nice disc for getting yourself out of trouble. So I will always have a Bard of some flavor. And then I have one of the most irreplaceable discs in my entire bag. And that is I believe it's a VIP Nico anvil. Now, anvils are extremely overstable. This particular run of anvils is insane. It's like a pane of glass. Sorry about that. It is so flat. I will almost never throw this backhand because it doesn't go anywhere if I throw it backhand. It instantly fades into the ground. But it is perfect for a forehand, especially a recovery shot or something that you need to throw forehand and have it go to the right, immediately to the right. A shot that I like to throw with this disc as an approach is to throw it on like a 45-degree hyzer or anhyzer. So I'm throwing it as an anhyzer out of my forehand, and it goes straight through the air, corkscrews, drops. And it's just insane how overstable this thing is. Throw it and it goes boom. Now throw it towards the basket and hopefully you've got boom by the basket, which is the plan normally. But extremely overstable. I mean, it's just silly how flat this disc is. So those are my mid-ranges. For control drivers, fairway drivers, I carry 7. The reason I hesitated there is that I used to carry 6, 6, and 6. 6 mids, 6 controls, 6 distance. The bag has been evolving at the beginning of this year simply because my mechanics are changing and I've needed to do some substitutions. So I'm carrying 1 less mid-range, and I'm carrying 1 more control driver. So anyway, my most understable control driver is Manala. It is an Underworld. It's a VIP Underworld. I don't use this very much because I don't often need an understable fairway driver. Usually, if I need something to go out and go right, I'll throw forehand, and I've got plenty of forehand control drivers. But every once in a while, I'll need something to go out, not aggressively to the right, but a strong right movement and then a pan out, and that's what the Underworld will give me. I recommend Underworlds to beginning players that I see on the course all the time. I'll have a couple of these in the car and I'll pass them out, because for a slower arm speed, this actually is a nice straight flyer for a lot of beginners. And for most of you, you guys know, for most of you, if you see the beginners on the course and they're all carrying high-speed drivers and struggling to get them to go anywhere, and you put something like this in their hand and all of a sudden they're throwing something flat and reasonably far and their eyeballs jump, and I love doing that. So I have one in my bag for very specific situations, but don't often use it. It's good to have it if you need it, though. The next 3 discs are all stags. As I said earlier with the Warship, I love the Warship mold. I love the stag mold. I'm a huge proponent of minimizing your molds, having multiples of those molds of different wares, different plastics, whatever, different flight characteristics, and then focusing on them. Now, my perspective on that is the molds themselves, it always feel the same. So here I have 3 discs that feel the same in my hand. The grip is the same, the rim width is the same. So I'm not so worried about grip or how big the rim is. But I carry multiple discs, multiple flight characteristics, and these 3 discs probably cover 80% of what I need as far as backhand control drivers. I have a hybrid. This is the most understable. That light is gonna drive me nuts though. This is the most understable, and by understable I mean throw it flat backhand, up to speed, it'll drift to the right and then drift back to the left before it hits the ground. Usually I don't get any kind of straight flight out of this, but it will go a long way because of the S turn. So if I need an S shot, a turnover shot of some sort, here you go. I have this RoboStag. I believe this is a Les White stamp, and I also believe that this is another VIP. Might be another VIP hybrid. This guy is straight. Crank it up, throw it flat, straight through the woods. Fades at the end, of course, but straight through the woods. It's a great tunnel disc. It will fly straight. Now, the question is, do I put it on the right line? If I put it on the right line, right down the tunnel it goes. If I put it on the wrong line, then hit tree, head for crap. But this is my main control driver. Hammer it through the woods, nice and straight. And then I have this, I guess this is considered like a chameleon stag, or it's not a sparkle stag, there's no sparkle, but this was a special run. Silly overstable for a stag. For quite a while I was throwing this thing, I couldn't keep it flat. I couldn't get it to go straight at all. It was coming out of my hand, and it seemed like it was heavy. Like I would grip it, and right as I threw it, it seemed like the flight plate would just drop. And so when I release it, it's already on a hyzer, and it's already headed to the left. That was a mechanics issue, and it was, my own silliness. I'm getting it straight now, and I'm getting it flat. Sorry, I'm getting it flat now, and it's nice and straight for about half its flight, and then off to the left it goes. So if you need to go out and go around a left-hand corner, there you go. Reliable, consistent. That's it. Consistent. If I throw it the same, it flies the same, and it's always going to head to the left. Now the other 3 control drivers that I have, or the last 3, are primarily forehand control drivers. I have a Long Bowman that came out of the Westside Queen box, I think. I I have an old West Side Fortress. You can see old because the stamp is starting to disappear. And then I have this special Nico Tournament X prototype ATI, which you can tell by the smile on my face. It's kind of like the Anvil. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. The Long Bowman and the Fortress, both forehand discs. I will throw the Long Bowman flat. It will drift left. It will be a little bit understable for a forehand, so it will drift left, flatten out, and come back. But it's fairly straight. So I can cheat a little bit, release it on a slight hyzer, and it'll flip up flat. The Fortress, on the other hand, I'm almost always throwing it on a hyzer or on a anhyzer, simply because it still has a lot of stability left, and it likes to fade out. So in the woods, I can get this release on a, I don't know, what's that, a 10-15 degree anhyzer, and you know, nice, easy, flip up, turn, come back. So just different levels of stability here, but they're both stable enough to handle my forehand throw. And now we get to the ATI. The ATI, like the Anvil, is plate glass flat. And plate glass flat with this disc means you lay it on the table and it turns over. Not quite, but the same as with the Anvil. I will throw this thing on a 45 degree anhyzer, and it does this through the air. It stays on a relatively straight line and just does this. Once it gets to this point, it falls out of the sky. So again, great recovery disc. Forehand rollers a little bit. It's stable enough, but there's other discs that I will use for forehand rollers if I need them to go any distance. This is such a great recovery disc. This and the Anvil have saved my bacon so many times I just can't even count. And that brings us to drivers. Now, I said earlier that I play primarily wooded courses. I like playing the wooded courses because it kind of nullifies the strength of the younger arms. You know, we get out on a flat course, out on a ball golf course or something, and you know, the young bucks are just out driving me by ridiculous amounts every throw. But we get in the woods, and you know, I kind of rely on accuracy a lot more than distance, and the youngsters have a little bit more trouble when you get some obstacles out there. So, or some of them do anyway. So tend to play on wooded courses more, so I don't have the need for drivers as much. But I do carry 6, and it's basically the same formula that I use for the control drivers. I've got 4 that I use for my forehand, or for my backhand. I've got this BT, was it BT what? Just BT, I guess. King. This is understable to a point of uselessness. Now, why do I have it in my bag? Because every once in a while there is a shot, just like the Underworld or the Tursus. Every once in a while there's a shot that just demands that particular disc. I think everybody probably has a disc or 2 or 3 like that in their bag, where they don't need it except for that specific shot. But when they're faced with that specific shot, they've got the disc for it. That's kind of why this king is there. Um, if I need something to keep going right with my backhand, not pan out, not come back, just I throw it out there and it turns and it keeps going. If I throw it too hard, turns and burns. If I don't throw it hard enough, well, then that's silly. Why am I even using it? I use a control driver. But when I need something to keep going right, when I need to throw a backhand and I need to keep going right, that's the disc I need. The next one is another king. Of course, I have 3 kings. The whole mold thing comes into play again. This is a Disc Golf Pro Tour king that I picked up at Stafford Woods 2 years ago. And this is nice and flat, a nice and flat flight. Doesn't turn much. A little if I get on it too much. Doesn't fade a whole lot. Nice big distance. Not the biggest distance, but it's certainly the straightest flight of my backhand drivers, distance drivers. I have a Sparkle King that I need to power up in order to get it any semblance of straight, and it has a pretty hefty fade at the end. So I needed something that was more stable than my Disc Golf Pro Tour, my pink king, and that was this guy. Now, just went through the 3 kings. My mechanics have changed in the last 2 months. After working with Dan a little bit and doing some video of myself and watching some of the not particularly good mechanics that I had and starting to change some of them, I've started getting more arm speed. More arm speed means more disc speed. More disc speed means the discs are starting to fly. The discs are starting to turn more, especially the drivers. So those 3 kings, which were, understable, straight, and stable and overstable, are now really unstable to the point of uselessness. Pretty unstable and slightly understable. So now all of my kings are going to the right. All of them. Not good when you need to go straight. So I picked up, I had this on my shelf back here for a long time, and just pulled it out on a whim to see if it could it could be a straight disc for me now that I'm getting more arm speed. And it's really nice. And I'm not even sure what plastic it is. I think it's a tournament plastic. But it is a Westside Sword, and it's just a sword. It's a tournament disc. A tournament stamp, sorry. It's a tournament stamp. But it's a very domey. I was surprised at how domey this thing was. Pulled it off the shelf, took it out in the field during a practice session, and started throwing it. And where my kings were all going to the right, this guy just went straight like it was on train tracks. It just didn't go anywhere. It didn't turn at all. And it didn't really fade that hard either. It just went straight. And I was, picked my jaw up off the ground and threw it again. Same thing. So now I'm not getting the same distance, and I'm probably not getting the same distance because I'm not getting the turn, the long turn and fade back that I get with the kings. This goes straight and then it drops off. But man, in the woods, or not even in the woods, any place where you have a specific line that you have to stay on for the distance driver, this guy's just key. It was a mind-blowing discovery of mine the last couple of weeks. You can kind of tell I'm a little weird. Anyway, 2 more distance drivers, both forehand drivers. This guy is an Air Giant. It's a Japan Open version, I guess I call it, of an Air Giant. And I'm trying to see if the weight is on here. It's a 150 something, but I don't see the weight, so oh well. Just 150 class is what it says. This guy messes with my timing. Now, most of my discs are mid to high 170s, and this is a 150. So, I'm throwing, my adder, or I'm throwing my Fortress and my Longbowman forehand control drivers, and practicing with them and getting them to fly on the line I expect, and then I pick this up and use the same mechanics, but because it's 20 grams lighter, my arm's coming through a whole lot faster, my timing is all off, and this guy is going way off to the left. So I actually have to slow down when I pick this disc up and be a lot more conscious of timing and release point than I do the other discs, just because it's different. It's lighter, and it just messes things up. Now the other aspect of the fact that this is lighter is can't throw in headwind. This guy does not like headwinds because it's so much lighter. But when there's no headwind, or when there's tailwind, man, can I get this thing to fly far. I throw it on a slight Anheuser because it is a Giant, so it's overstable. I throw it on a slight Anheuser, and it'll hold that Anheuser just a ridiculous amount, and then flip up, and then dump. And I throw it farther than my backhand discs. I throw it farther than my kings. So if it's just a wide open field, no wind, just throw it as far as you can downrange. There you go. And the last disc I have is a Sparkle Adder. It's a VIP adder. It's a first run. I didn't even realize that. I go back and forth. Oops, too much glare. I go back and forth between the adder and the Warhorse. The adder, I seem to get a little bit more distance. It seems like the numbers are pretty much the same, but it seems like it gives me a little more glide. And it's not as overstable as the Ahti or the Anvil, but it gives me exactly what I want for the overstable part of my driver bag. Throw it on an Anheuser. Throw it as hard as I can. I don't get the same distance that I do with the Giant. I get a quicker flip up and a quicker dump. I also use this guy for forehand roller. I don't throw them often. Usually when I don't have any other choice. But I can get this guy to stand up and ride for a reasonable distance if I throw it forehand, if I throw a forehand roller with it. So that is the bag for the beginning of this year. Now, I do have some plans for the bag going forward. Like I said earlier, I've added a putter. That putter is primarily just to throw, not to putt with, just to throw. I have a Tersus in my mid-ranges, which at some point I will replace with a Warship as soon as I get a warship that's hit enough trees and walls and rocks and stuff that it's now obnoxiously understable. The same with the underworld. The underworld will go back into the trunk to be given to to beginner players, young players. But at the moment, the most understable stag that I have isn't understable enough to cover that really hard right turn with a backhand that I need. So that'll be another change once I am able to move my stags down in stability and find another stag to fit in that category. And that's pretty much it. I'll probably do the same thing with the kings at some point. At some point, that really understable pink king is going to have to go away. I've already started having trouble keeping from backhand rolling it. Now, I don't throw a backhand roller. That's not part of my game. It's not a shot that I'm consistent with. It's not a shot that I've practiced. I probably will this spring to try to get that particular skill back in my bag. But at this point, because my mechanics are changing, my arm speed is coming up, that disc is becoming almost unusable. But all of the kings have become less stable for me, so I have a feeling that they're all just going to move down. So that's it. That's the in the bag. Thankfully, there's been no wind in the basement, so there's no extraneous sounds other than the dog walking up and down the steps and thinking that all the discs are hers. So that's my video entry for the week, and watch for a blog entry a little bit later in the week. I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to drop the blog entry that I have on tournament preparation, or if I'm going to drop the blog entry. I have a blog entry that I'm writing that has to do with switching sports. I played some other sports when I was younger, and their mechanics are, shall we say, not conducive to good disc golf form, good disc golf mechanics. So one of those two blog entries will drop later in the week, and then I'm not completely sure. I'm going to pull up my calendar here. I'm not completely sure what my tournament is next week, and I am playing in the Lumsicle, which is a C tier at Lums Pond State Park in Bear, Delaware. So that will be, if you're in the area, that will be where you can catch me. So till then, I'll see you out on the course.